By the looks of things, you'd almost think we got a full-on production house here. But we don't. We just got me in my house in a shop. And today is my 600-mile service. That's right. I'm just about 4 miles from 600 miles. And on most Japanese bikes, you're going to have, of the street variety anyway, you're going to have a first service in which you're going to have to probably be asked to take it to a dealership. And you're going to be asked to pay a bunch of money for really not a whole heck of a lot of stuff that you can't do yourself. Matter of fact, I take that back, scratch it, rewind it. There isn't anything that you can't do yourself. This is my bike, a 2022 Kawasaki Z900, and it's due. So I'm going to go through all of the 600-mile service as it is in the manual. If you just bought a new bike and you're thinking, man, I'm out of money, man. I just forked out all of my savings, all of it on this. I could probably afford the oil and the filter. Well, guess what? I got a thing for you to do right now. Grab your tools. We're going to do a 600-mile service on your bike while I'm doing it on my bike. If you do have a Z900 Kawasaki, though, this thing's going to be perfect. It's going to be your video. It's literally made right for your 600-mile service. Service number one, 600-mile service. Here we go. Today, I'm going to be using the factory service manual for this, but you have this exact same chart in your owner's manual. If you're looking on your owner's manual, you'll see this periodic maintenance chart. So you're going to have your key up here, and it's got your A, B, and C, your emissions-related items, inspections, your change or replace, and lubrications. We're in this first column, so anything in this first column is something that we're going to be checking. First things first, before I actually change the oil, I'm going to start the bike to get that kind of heated up and kind of get it a little bit more soupy. It just drains a little better when it's a little warmer. The first thing that we're going to check is the idle speed. The idle speed on my bike is 1100 RPM. We're hovering right around 1000, so I'm actually going to bring it up just a hair. My idle adjust is right up underneath this area of the bike, and I can barely get my finger on it. That's about 12. I want to bring it down just a hair. There we go. All right, shut her down. Since you're going to be messing around with your throttle and everything, we're also going to check the throttle condition, the cable, and all of that stuff. You basically want to just give it a couple of turns, make sure it snaps right back, make sure that the proper amount of play is in the throttle. In my case, I like about 1/8 of an inch of play before it actually turns the throttle. You can adjust that, and I'll show you right now how to do that. But first things first, I'm just going to grab it and make sure that my throttle snaps right back to where it was. In my case, my adjustment for my throttle cable is up underneath right here, and I can just turn that to give myself more or less play. So in my case, I'm good. It's 600 miles. Again, most of the 600-mile stuff is literally just a visual inspection and making sure that everything is in order and looking for anything that might be out of order. So far, so good. The next thing in my manual is fuel system. So basically turn it on and make sure it's not leaking. If it's spewing fuel anywhere, you got a problem. If you have been riding it a little bit, you should know that you're at 600 miles. You probably have noticed this already. We're going to do a visual anyway because that's what's in the manual and that's what this video is about. All right, I don't see any gas dripping down into my pan, so I think we're good. I think we're okay. And after you've gotten a visual inspection of whether or not the thing is leaking fuel everywhere, if in fact you're in a state, basically everywhere, that has the evaporative emission control system on there, you're going to want to give that a visual check too. And if you're one of those few that has already voided your warranty with an exhaust system and all that good stuff and pulled all that stuff up, then I won't tell on you. Good for you. Then you don't have to worry about that step. On to the next one. From there, we're going to move on to the cooling system. And again, it's just a visual inspection of everything. You're going to make sure that you've got all of your hose clamps in the right spot, that nothing's leaking from any of the internals that you got there. All of your hoses look to be in good shape. Seems to be good. Radiator cap ain't missing, none of that stuff. Okay, visual, just a visual inspection. That's all we really need to do. When it all boils down, this is still a new motorcycle. So if I spot anything during this procedure, which would be just what the mechanics at the shop would be doing, I'm gonna go, I better notify the customer. In our case, we're just gonna do it backwards. If we have a problem, this bike should be still under warranty. Any of the small things, definitely a hose clamp that might be leaking, screw it tight, that's what we're looking for. But if you do notice a bigger problem, then that is absolutely a time to stop what you're doing and call the dealership and schedule a time to bring it in. The next order of things is to check our clutch play and our adjustment on that guy and all of the cable and everything that's running to it. If you have a hydraulic clutch, this is going to be pretty simple. You're going to just make sure nothing's leaking. If you have seen this channel before, you probably know I have a great video already on this very subject on adjusting your clutch. So go check it out. It's right up here. I'll put it right up here. For now, it does seem to be pretty good. I got a nice bit of free play. Nothing feels weird in the lever. And I like everything that's going on. I don't have any aftermarket levers right now. If you're going to buy an aftermarket lever, definitely make sure that you get one that is specific for your perch up here. Too many times do I see something bought off of eBay or something that's just kind of they toss them in a bin and they're made by the thousands and they're not really well built and they don't always fit right. So spend a little bit more money or do some really good research on something that's for your bike and get something that's top notch. You'll thank yourself later, and in the long run, they're just going to last you longer anyway. All right, we made it to the biggest part of this entire thing. We're going to change the oil right now. And the great thing about all of this is that the engine is finally just cooled down enough to where it's not going to be super hot when we hit the drain plug. Before you do the oil change, you're going to need a few things. You're going to want to have something nice and clean to let it drain into, a 17mm socket, an oil filter, the recommended oil for this bike, and a crush washer. You're not going to want to reuse the washer that's in this drain plug. You want to put a brand new crush washer in there. They're made of a very soft alloy and they crush down to make a nice seal on there so you don't get any drip, drip, drippity drip on your garage floor. In this case, I have all of the crush washers that I need. They're over there and I'll get to those later. I'm going to go ahead and get this a good crack. When you hit these the first time, don't sit here and just like, When you do this, you don't want to round off anything. You just give it a little impact. Bang. It's turned right away. You give that thing a turn. Let's see if I still have the touch. And not get myself dirty. That'll be the day. Oh, look at that. Now you get a chance to get a good inspection on your oil, and mine looks pretty good. It's not really looking out of the ordinary. It's actually looking just like it should. This is the break-in service, so it is being broken in. The engine is getting all of the fine particles from the manufacturing process of the engine, and that's what oil does, is it cleans everything out, and that's why it's got a filter and so on and so forth. So you're just getting all of those initial impurities out of the engine. We're going to put new non-impurities back in it. First, we've got to let that drain out, but with this bike, luckily the oil filter is just a little further over there, and once the bike stops pee-peeing a little oil, I can get right to the oil filter, which is right there. I guess more than just an end wrench, you're also going to want a filter wrench, but you can get away with a big set of pliers on this bike. Like a pair of channel locks would probably do it, but in my case, I do have an oil filter wrench for little motorcycles. It's not too hot down here, so I'll go ahead down, get that wrench on there, and start giving it a twist. Don't want to go factory. Ooh, they like it on there good, that factory stuff. This is a pretty little filter too, so kind of almost not surprised that this filter wrench doesn't want to grab onto it. It is a pretty small filter. You did not see me do this. All right. I didn't want to have to, little guy, but you've left me no choice. You don't want to crush it, but I do need to get it off, so. And it's just not cooperating. There it goes. Man, that thing's tight. The factory puts them on gorilla strength. I don't know what they do at the factory, but it's put on with like a machine that is over torques them. You can really get away with just a little more than hand tight on an oil filter. You don't need to overdo it. And now it comes right off. Look at that. And that oil looks real good, actually. So I'm really pleased. Not seeing anything abnormal. And it's all there, so that's good. And I'm going to let that thing drain. And I am going to, like I said, we're going to replace that little crush washer right there that was on that bolt right there, little drain pluggy, but we're going to replace that crush washer with a new one. They look like they're in good shape, but they're not. They're done. It's crushed once and it's trash. Throw it on the floor, or better yet, throw it in the trash where it's supposed to go. I've got myself a new crush washer, and I'm going to go ahead and clean that up and give this thing a nice little pluggy. It's still dripping a little bit, but I'm not too worried about the residuals of the drop. Everything's going to get changed eventually. So we'll go ahead and stick that back in there. And before I actually screw it all the way down, I do like to run my rag through just the back of that just to get any oil off of there. And then finger tight, grab our wrench. And don't over tighten any of this. When you over tighten anything like this, it's going to be bad. So about a quarter turn is all you need to do to make this have a nice seal. I don't even need to go down that far. There we go. Like a fifth of a turn. It just needs to be tight. All you really want to be doing is crushing that washer down. And you can feel it crush. And once it's crushed, don't go any further because you're going to strip that out. This is aluminum down here. It's not going to be good if you have to replace the threads. So now that we have that capped, we're ready to put a new oil filter on. I got my brand new Cowie oil filter ready to go on the bike, but before that, you want to kind of give this a little bit of lubrication. It does come in a little bag that's got a little bit of lubricant on it, but if you're like me, your old man always said, put a little bit on the O-ring on the filter before you put that filter on, bud. And I'll just give that a little coating on that O-ring. We'll clean that mating surface off. Now sometimes if you pull these off, make sure that the old O-ring isn't still on there. I have seen people actually put them on and then there's an extra O-ring on there and all of a sudden you're spewing oil. So if you notice, I'm just hand tightening this thing. I'm not gonna tighten it any more than hand tight. A good firm hand tight. You don't want to just baby it, but hand tight. And I think we're good. Now, we're ready to put some oil in that guy and call it good. But I am going to drop the rear wheel down so that the thing's level, because up on the rear stand, the rear sits up like that, so all the oil will go to the front. You want the bike to sit level while you're checking it in the sight glass. Now that the bike's sitting upright, I'll get a nice read in the sight glass. And I'm going to just get it right to the top line. Let that settle for a second. I still have a little bit of oil in the can. And I'm almost to that top line. You know what? A little bit more can't hurt. We're just going to be taking up a little bit in the filter when we start it. So a little bit more should get us right up to the top. And I can pull that off of there. Set that funnel aside. We are right at the line. And I'm going to go ahead and start it up, make sure I have oil pressure light, and from there we'll be good to go. Cool. My oil light went off. Means we got good oil pressure. Cool. Now I'm going to let it sit for a second and let all of that oil come right back down, and you'll see in the sight glass some of that oil return. And once it gets done, after about 5 minutes, we'll go ahead and top that right back off. In the meantime, we'll go on to the next step. Checking the drive chain slack. With chain slack, one of the first things you want to do is you want to spin the rear wheel and look for a tighter spot in the chain. I don't really have a tight spot in my chain. I would say every 300 miles, check and clean and lubricate your chain, especially if you're like me and you live out on a gravel or dirt road. You want to be checking this thing religiously all the time, all the time. Next, we're going to go into and have an inspection of the braking system. So starting with the rear brake, just make sure you've got brake pressure. You should know if you have brake pressure or not. If you've been riding it, you know you probably have brake pressure. If you got good brake pressure, next thing you want to do is check the brake reservoir, make sure all the fluid's in there and everything checks out. Do the same thing with the front. So you have good brake pressure up top. And in this case, we have a sealed brake reservoir, but in the front you do have a sight glass. Braking system, okie dokie. Now that it's been a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and just top off my oil a little bit more to make sure that I'm looking good. Everything's settled back down. I'm still right about midway up the sight glass, just between the two hash marks, and that's good. That'll probably be fine, but I like it to be just a little higher than that. It's personal preference for me. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll be on to the last couple of things. Since I have my bike in the lift, the steering is actually locked right now, so I can't really check any of the play. The best thing to do is to get on the bike when it's on the ground, hold the front brake, and push down on the bars. If you feel any movement, then you have a little bit of steering head play, and you need to get that adjusted as well. If you want me to do the actual adjustment or the check on this particular bike, just leave a comment below, and I'll absolutely do that video for you, just for you. The final check over everything else is to just do an overall chassis inspection, check for nuts and bolts that are missing, and make sure that any of the serious stuff is in place. That means that your wheel is in alignment, all of that good stuff. Yeah, after that, you're pretty good. We're done with this whole thing. That's it. That's all of the inspection. After that, you're done. Chassis bolts, we're done. You've done your 600-mile service. It was easier than we thought, wasn't it? When you do take it into a dealership to have them do your 600-mile service, it is, of course, good, and don't let them tell you that it would void warranty if you don't do it. Just mark everything down and keep your receipts for your oil change, all of the parts that you used and all of that stuff. And write it down in the manual that it was done. Date it, put your initials by it. It'll still hold up in court. You're fine. That's about enough for me. I'm going to get the last couple things done and get this thing on the ground because I got a ride to go on tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video or you've learned something or it was helpful for you, please give it a like. Give me a follow if you're interested in following along with some other projects that I have going on. And definitely come back next time. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm out of here. It's time to go riding.